Have you ever wondered if creatine is actually safe for women, if it causes weight gain, or if it's something moms should even be taking? Today's episode is going to completely change the way you think about this powerful nutrient. Yes, that's right, creatine is a nutrient. I am joined by sports dietitian Diana Nguyen, who I met at FNCE after her presentation on creatine research, and we're breaking down exactly how creatine supports women's health, energy, strength, and recovery, and how to use it in the right way. Let's get into it. Feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or like you've lost yourself in the postpartum chaos? Whether you're 4 weeks postpartum, 2 years in, or done having babies, you deserve to feel like yourself again. Hey mama, I'm Val, a functional sports dietitian, postpartum fitness coach, and a mama who understands exactly what you're going through. Welcome to the Strong Nourished Momma Podcast, where you'll find simple, science-backed strategies to heal your core, rebuild strength, and restore your energy without the overwhelm. If you're ready to go from depleted to strong, nourished, and unstoppable, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey mama, and welcome back to the show. Today's episode is such a good one. You're definitely going to want to save it and probably listen to it at least one more time after this. I am joined by Diana, a sports dietitian and performance nutrition expert who currently works as a contract performance dietitian at Fort Liberty, supporting combat readiness, health, and career longevity for service members. She also has over a decade of experience in collegiate athletics, previously serving in leadership roles at Texas A&M University and North Carolina State University. Diana is also the owner of Tier 1 Nutrition, where she provides performance nutrition education for tactical professionals, first responders, and competitive athletes. I met Diana at FNCE, which is a large nutrition conference, after she presented alongside Professor Eric Rawson on creatine research. And after hearing her speak, I knew I just had to bring her on the show to have this conversation because creatine is one of the most misunderstood yet most powerful supplements for women. And if you listen to episode 24, where I broke down what creatine is and whether moms should be taking it, today's conversation is the perfect next layer because we're going deeper into the research and practical application with a sports nutrition expert. In this episode, we're breaking down why creatine should be part of your supplement stack, whether creatine actually causes weight gain, how to take it, timing strategies, and the incredible health benefits creatine offers women beyond just muscle and performance. If you're a mom who wants more energy, better workouts, stronger recovery, and real science-backed strategies, you're going to love this one. Now, here is Diana. Diana, hey, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I met you at FNCE in Nashville, and I absolutely loved your presentation with Professor Eric Rawson. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have her on the podcast. So before we dive into everything, can you share a little bit about your background as a sports dietitian? You're also a strength and conditioning coach, and what led you to really get interested in creatine research and education?
Yeah, man, I feel like I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen that the evolution of sports nutrition has really been a pleasure. When I was in college, sports nutrition really wasn't a thing. There were a handful of dietitians who were kind of in sports settings doing sports things, but it wasn't really a labeled career. I was fortunate to go to, I was an undergrad at Virginia Tech, and there was a dietitian who was working full-time in the athletics department, Amy Friel. And as soon as I learned what she did, I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds really cool. After I was an athlete growing up my whole life, my mom was actually, she's a retired dietitian. She worked for a VA hospital as an outpatient dietitian. And so I had that kind of exposure, but I was like, I want to go do my own thing, chart my own waters. But then when I learned that you could actually work with athletes and do nutrition, I was like, oh my gosh, you can get paid to do that. That's amazing. And so the beginning of my career was working as a student at Virginia Tech. And I just fell in love with the whole process of preparing an athlete for competition, maintaining them during season and whatnot, and then recovering them afterwards, and the whole cycle that encompasses that. And then so that's when more dietitians started to get hired. after my grad school, after my internship at UVA, I went back to grad school at Virginia Tech, spent 2 years there. And then after that, I went down to Texas A&M as assistant director of performance nutrition. That was my first full-time job. And at the time, there were maybe 30, 40 full-time dietitians in athletics departments. And now it's just blown up, which is so cool. And we, we kind of followed strength and conditioning in that was kind of a way in for performance dietitians. Because there were obviously more strength coaches and ATCs and whatnot built into the athletics department. So we kind of came in as semi coaches, and then we towed the line between practitioner and coach. And that's how a lot of us kind of got started within the career field. And after that, I went on to NC State as director of nutrition, kind of helped to build that program. And then in 2020, I transitioned into the tactical setting where I am now. And I have my private practice as well. And it's all like the definition of sports nutrition is very singular in that, it's a very defined goal that you're trying to achieve. A sprinter is trying to get faster. A football player is trying to get bigger, stronger, faster. A jumper, a swimmer, very defined goals. Whereas the definition of performance is much more broad. Am I looking at performance of a first responder, somebody who is doing shift work? Am I looking at performance of a tactical athlete who is in austere environments and climbing mountains and in deserts and swamps and all kinds of environments around the world? How are they sustaining their ability to do their job? And then, of course, you're always going to have your athletes. So I think that the evolution of performance nutrition has broadened so much that and that's what drew me into more and more science. And I love reading research and I love being able to interpret it. And creatine crosses all boundaries and applies to everybody. And it's like my favorite thing ever, which hopefully I'll convey today. It's so useful because it started as, the goal was to increase creatine in our skeletal muscle mass, right? 95% of creatine is in our skeletal muscle mass. And so the goal was to be able to enhance lean body mass, enhance strength performance, enhance athletic performance. But since then, over the past decade or two, or maybe longer, it's kind of crossed the boundaries into health and performance. And now you're looking at creatine supplementation in women, in older individuals, in TBI recovery, injury recovery. And that's why it's such a multifaceted ingredient and supplement that still kind of gets misunderstood for some reason today. But I think that there's so much science behind it that's so supportive. It's almost a no-brainer in my opinion. So all that to say, the field kind of found me, and then I just fell in love with all the science of it and nutrition of it. And I love being able to help athletes of all types achieve their goals, whether it's like acute goals of getting, bigger, stronger, faster, and then chronic goals in aging well.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. And I love how you turn your passion of being an athlete, growing up, being active, doing various different types of things, and being able to put that into like have that be your profession. Like that's so cool. And that's very similar to my background, in which like grew up very active, learned about, of course, exercise science and then nutrition and sports dietetics. Like, oh, cool. That's awesome. Like this can be your job. Like it doesn't even feel like a job. This is just super fun. So I love that. And I think with creatine, I totally agree. It's a no brainer. And I'm so excited to talk to you about it today. And I started supplementing with it. I was 5 months postpartum, and I'm like, why didn't I start sooner? And I kept thinking about it even when I was pregnant, and I don't know, maybe I just forgot about it, but I always tell people, I wish I started supplementing with it sooner. Like it would have been so cool to see, of course, before I got pregnant, when I was doing different types of activities, but during pregnancy, early postpartum. So I'm excited to talk about it. Let's dive into the basics. I know a lot of the times when women hear creatine, they think bodybuilding, they think bulking up, they're going to look bulky. So can you explain to us what creatine is? What exactly is it? And what does it do in the body?
So creatine, it's a nutrient. we can synthesize it endogenously. We can make our own creatine through our liver, kidneys, even our brain. And that classifies it as a nutrient, right? Because you can make it yourself. However, we also get it from our diet. The primary source of creatine is meat. So seafood, poultry, beef, pork are going to be your best dietary sources of creatine. There is currently no vegetarian source of creatine, which we can dive into. And I think that it gets misunderstood because creatine, because it's found in skeletal muscle mass, it can, it's been, kind of blown up through the layman's, articles where, oh, you're gaining so much water weight from creatine, when in fact it really just kind of shifts fluids from extracellular to intracellular. So in that way, it kind of helps to decrease bloating that a lot of women feel. But it is a nutrient. It is synthesized endogenously, and therefore it's something that many of us could benefit from supplemental wise. Because there's quite a bit of research that supports individuals who may have higher needs, but also a lot of people, you kind of mentioned, you started taking it postpartum a couple months later. You may have higher needs at certain points in your life, but also if you're not consuming nutrients and foods that contain creatine, or if you're a vegetarian, or if you can't eat those foods for whatever reason, you probably fall in the category where you may have lower creatine than somebody else, and therefore you could benefit from having creatine in your body. I often look at creatine, and we can talk about this when we get to kind of my supplement stack, as far as if you are if you're not able to get certain nutrients through your food alone to the ideal dose to create that benefit or to support performance or to support health, i.e. vitamin D, i.e., fish oil, whatnot, omega-3 fatty acids, creatine falls in that too. So, and that's one of the reasons why I really like it. But overall, creatine is synthesized naturally in your body. And it basically just helps to replenish your ATP stores. Your ATP is your energy source, and it helps to kind of donate phosphate groups to regenerate ATP within the body. And that's how it truly helps with performance in specifically athletic performance or cognitive performance, because it just regenerates that faster. Whereas it prevents your body from having to go into other forms of metabolism and other forms that would energy utilization. So it just kind of helps to recycle that and recharge it.
And we need energy, literally every single cell within the body. So it's not just to increase lean mass, skeletal muscle mass, to lift heavier, one rep heavier. That's often, I think, where women they're like, well, I don't want to lift that heavy. And it's like, well, that's a
Mm-hmm.
totally another conversation because we should be lifting heavy. But
Yeah.
creatine is going to be doing so much more. I think the research on, and when you guys were explaining it in your presentation on the cognitive function with it
Mm-hmm.
is so fascinating. And when we're talking about moms, of course, going through pregnancy, but like after having a baby, you have mom brain, and
Oh
like
my
of course
gosh.
you it's so
You
fascinating.
forget how many times have you forgotten where your keys are,
Oh
what
yeah.
you walked into that room to do? Like everybody, every woman, probably men too, at some point can relate to that or some story like
Definitely.
that.
Definitely. And so it's just cool to know that this nutrient that we make and that we
Hmm.
eat is going to help with that, because many people think too that it's two things. It's either a steroid or they get
Yeah.
it confused with creatinine,
Yeah.
which is not that, right?
Right. Creatinine is a breakdown product of muscle breakdown, and it is also a byproduct of creatine metabolism. So a lot of this, one of the things I like to correlate this with, and professionals could get mistaken by this too. Like, if you're a practitioner, an MD, a DO, anybody like that, I hear this all the time. Oh, your creatinine's high. I need you to stop taking creatine. It's increasing risk of cramping, it's damaging your kidneys, whatever it is. Think about it like your pantry, right? Your pantry at home. If you fill it, it's gonna have food. That food is, when you cook it, you're gonna generate trash. The trash is your creatinine that your kidneys will eliminate from your body. That's you taking the trash out. But if you buy more food and put it in your pantry, it doesn't stop the cycle of trash. You're just creating more trash. So it's not hurting you in any way as an isolated lab. To identify if there's actual kidney damage, you would need to look at other metrics and also just talk to the person and figure things out. But you would never diagnose somebody off a single lab because labs could be wrong too. But also, athletes are always going to have slightly elevated creatinine even without creatine supplementation simply because of the elevated muscle breakdown or the time in which that lab was done. So it's important to, I really like the pantry example of just like think about taking supplemental creatine. You already have food in there, which is your endogenously synthesized creatine. You're now adding more food, which is now allowing you to cook more food and generating more trash. It's still the same system. You're just generating more of it.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So totally different things. And I like how you said we're not going to treat the lab. We're going to treat the person and actually figure out what's going on,
Exactly.
what else is happening. What are some other myths or misconceptions that you hear about creatine?
I think the main one that I hear, especially from women, is I'm going to gain so much weight. I'm scared. I don't want to do it. And I will tell you that really what the literature shows is that there is no significant weight gain or marginal at best weight gain when taking creatine supplementation. I have countless females on creatine and there is zero change in their body weight because of the creatine. With that said, if you take the loading dose of creatine, which is 20 grams a day, split into 5-gram doses potentially, or two 10-gram doses, you may for a few days feel a little bit of fluid shift, but that will dissipate and it will normalize because you can only saturate once your muscles are at 100% saturation. You're not going to exponentially continue to go up. You're not going to exponentially store water. Remember, creatine draws water into the cell, so it actually hydrates you much better. And it could help reduce a bloating feeling, like I mentioned earlier, for women during your menstrual cycle. So, man, that's a win for us because how many of us feel bloated and uncomfortable during that time? Because it will shift and ebb and flow potentially with your estrogen as your estrogen ebbs and flows throughout your menstrual cycle. So, it's super beneficial for women.
I hear that a lot too, that I'm going to gain weight. Like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. And I think explaining that is awesome. So if you're listening to this and that's what you're thinking, it's actually going to be hydrating you. And you don't have to, let's go to the dosing real quick. You don't have to do the loading dose. So you said 20 grams a day, split dose.
Yep.
What would you recommend for someone who's thinking of taking creatine? Let's talk,
Mhm.
let's talk dose, timing, and type.
I think if you're having any kind of hesitation with creatine, it's okay to start with a low dose. Like 3 to 5 grams a day is totally fine. But it's also in how you mix it to make sure you don't have any GI side effects. But 3 to 5 grams a day is typically what the standard across the board recommendation is, and that could be dependent on body weight, right? If you want to do, you know, if you really want to do it by body weight, zero point 0.1 grams per kg, because if I'm looking at a 6'5", 230-pound athlete and then a 5'1" gymnast, it may make sense to dose them differently. That guy may need, 7.5 grams to 10 grams, depending on what his goal is. Is he trying to achieve skeletal muscle mass saturation? Am I trying to cross that blood-brain barrier, which is a little bit more selective with what goes through to the brain, clearly, because the brain is super important. But overall, like I tell athletes, really for monetary sake, you don't need to do a loading dose. It's more a timing thing. The loading dose will saturate your muscle much faster than the 3 to 5 gram dose. So the 3 to 5 gram dose will still saturate your muscle, but it'll take about 4 weeks versus 5 to 7 days on the loading dose. So it's like if I'm talking to an athlete and they tell me, "Hey Diana, I have this thing coming up next week, or I have this competition and it's 2 weeks out." I'm like, "Great, let's do the loading dose. Let's get you, make sure that you're ready. We started a little late, but it's better late than never." But if it's like, hey, Diana, I'm kind of interested in doing this. I don't really have anything fantastic, or maybe it's my postseason or whatever it might be. Or if it's a woman who's just kind of a weekend warrior, it doesn't matter. Everybody can benefit. You may not need to push that loading dose.
That makes a lot of sense. What about this is what I'm thinking. I want to have another baby in the future, and I'm thinking as I get closer to
Mm-hmm.
labor and delivery, would it be would it be ideal to play around with a loading dose around that time? What are your thoughts on that?
I have not seen any literature specifically around that because
Yeah.
it's hard to study pregnant
Yeah.
women, right? There's a little bit of ethics behind that. It's also hard to measure like brain creatine levels. Like nobody's taking brain biopsies, so we're relying on magnetic spectroscopy, MRIs and whatnot to tell us these things, or blood biomarkers to tell us what's going on in the brain. But I think if you're somebody who's in the childbearing years and you are planning to have a child, or I say everybody, but we'll focus on this. I think that for me, I would still recommend the maintenance dose
Okay.
across that time, just like you would a prenatal vitamin. It's
Yeah.
just part of your regimen. No need to push it if you're uncomfortable. Would I be worried if a female were trying to get pregnant or trying to conceive doing a loading dose? No, that wouldn't scare me at all. Again, going back to it's a nutrient. Your body makes it, we consume it in our diet. It's not something that I'm concerned about. It's extremely low risk. There's decades of literature on creatine. Their creatine is shown to be safe at 30 grams a day up to 5 years. And the only reason why it cuts off at 5 years is because it's really expensive to do tests any longer than that. That's it. Research is hard. So, especially long-term research at that kind of level. So, it's extremely low risk. Your doctors probably won't talk to you about it because it's not their job to know about it, to be honest. It's our job to work together with the medical providers and with our medical partners to educate everybody, make sure that we're elevating our patients. But also, like doctors are always going to go with the minimum risk possible. They if they don't know about it, they're not going to recommend it. So just kind of keeping that in mind too.
Makes 100% sense. And staying at that maintenance dose too, because obviously it takes energy to create a human and then
Oh
to
yeah.
to give birth. So it would be I'm interested to see and if there's a difference whenever that happens. So maintenance dose 3 to 5 grams a day, and you
Mhm.
would take it chronically, correct?
I would take it chronically. It's kind of and honestly, like because like I said, if you stop your creatine supplement, it's still your muscle creatine content is still going to be elevated for about 4 weeks. So if you're like Diana, I'm on a budget, I don't really want to take something like that every day if I don't really need it. Again, I take it and I look at it like like a multivitamin. Like I take my vitamin D, I take my fish oil, take my multivitamin, take my creatine. That's my stack, daily without fail. But because it's still with me, it's not like a water soluble vitamin where it's like vitamin C, I need to take it every day. If warranted, I might skip the weekends, right? So that'll save me 52 weekends out of the year. And that'll save me a couple servings, but I'm going to take it during the week and it'll still saturate my muscle. It shouldn't notice any huge difference. And that way it's still in my system. But I'm just not taking it on those 2 days or whatever days don't make sense to you to add into routine, just to extend budgets. You know what I mean?
So if you forget a day or two, or if you're thinking about your budget, it's totally okay. And then just kind
Yeah.
of just staying consistent with it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not like a prescription pill that you are required to
yeah.
take at a certain time, at a certain day. It's not quite that regimented. But as with most things with nutrition, the more regularly you take it, the more benefits you're going to get out of it.
Yes. And we're speaking of monohydrate, creatine monohydrate, because there are different types, correct?
Correct. You saw the slide that Dr. Rawson
Yeah.
posted. It's Mount Creatine where there are all the different formulations of creatine. I will tell you, and I 100% agree with him because he mentioned this too. Creatine monohydrate really trumps all the others because that's what the most scientific and safety literature is on. It is 99% bioavailable. It's very tolerated. It's pretty heat stable. So if you can do better than that, then by all means, go for it. I think sometimes if individuals complain or report GI distress, a lot of times what I hear them doing is they're mixing it in cold water and chugging it down or some kind of cold beverage. creatine is insoluble. So when you mix creatine in cold water, you'll see it form or like just stay on the bottom. And then you try to suck it down. Guess what that's doing? It's going to pull water into your stomach. So you're not going to feel good. I tell people you're going to hate me if you do that. So please don't do that. But I think a lot of that GI distress is really a result of how people take it. So I don't recommend putting it in cold beverages unless it's in your like post-workout smoothie or protein drink, whatever, if that's what you like to do. It does absorb better when you consume it with carbohydrate. So I actually recommend people, you could also mix in your yogurt in the morning. You could put in oatmeal, warm or cold if you like overnight oats or, normal hot oatmeal, I guess you could say. You could put in coffee, you could put in tea. A lot of the early research in creatine was actually individuals putting it in warm tea. So it dissolves really well. And it has zero taste, so it's not going to influence the taste of your product or your food. So just changing how you take it and putting in something warm so it dissolves completely will really alleviate any risk of GI distress.
That's super helpful because I hear that a lot too from people. They're like, I heard my friend or so and so, they have stomach issues or GI distress when they take it, and I don't want that. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, here are the things that you can do to help
Yeah.
minimize that because like you said, I think you explained it perfectly, is it's pulling water into the gut. And that's
Hmm.
not fun, especially when you're moving and you're exercising. So
Yeah.
those are some easy ways I think, especially busy moms can figure out ways to put them in and kind of put
Yeah.
everything together. So you have your real whole food, you have overnight oats, maybe put some protein powder in there to bump up protein, and then you add your
Yep.
creatine. Boom, easy.
Yep. Exactly.
And then with the budget, something else to think about is the quality of our nutrition, since you're saying that it's in our food, right? So really focusing on
Mhm.
getting in those animal foods.
Yeah, and you could potentially, theoretically, you could consume up to 20 grams of creatine through food, but you would have to eat, to get the 5 gram dose, you'd have to eat close to 36 ounces of poultry. So,
Oh man.
there are like 6 hamburgers a day, which I am a dietitian and I love all food, but I'm not recommending 6 hamburgers for anybody.
No, not at all.
It's just not realistic. So it makes more sense if you're trying to get that minimum effective dose of 5 grams to get it through a supplement. Most of us consume anywhere between 1 and 2 grams a day. There was an NHANES study that I cited in our presentation that identified there are 6 out of 10 women in the US who don't consume adequate creatine, meaning they consume less than a gram a day. So that
Wow.
is considered inadequate. Now, we don't have an RDA for creatine, but that's kind of what we're seeing in literature. And when it's an NHANES study, that kind of captures my attention. So it's like me as a dietitian, I look at, okay, what's the risk to my population, or what's the current status? Okay, this population, women, are not consuming enough creatine, and a lot of that could be due to women just are smaller. Number one, so we have less muscle creatine. This is less muscle, but also a lot of women may not meet their protein recommendations. And if you are meeting your protein recommendations, is it animal or is it plant? There's a huge movement in plant-based proteins or vegan, vegetarian type stuff, which is fine if you choose to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. It just means you have to work a little bit harder to get to that protein goal. But also, like I mentioned earlier, there's no creatine found in vegetarian proteins. It does not exist unless it's fortified or added in some way, shape, or form. So vegetarians will naturally have roughly 30% lower creatine stores than omnivores. So people who eat plants and animals. Now, because of that, women or men, both, who are vegetarian, vegan, may respond better than I would because I'm an omnivore. I eat animals and plants to creatine because they just naturally had less to begin with. It's kind of like if I were to take a Division 1 athlete and then, somebody off the street who hasn't trained in their life or in a long, long time, they're completely detrained. That person off the street who hasn't trained, who's detrained, is going to get a lot more benefit a lot faster than my athlete because my athlete's well trained. So that person has to work a heck of a lot harder to get any marginal difference or improvement in whatever they're trying to improve versus this person who's brand new. It's like, oh man, all this great stimuli, my muscles getting bigger, I'm getting bigger, faster, stronger, all those things. Like, There is a difference between omnivores and vegetarians, vegans, people who follow more plant-based diets.
So supplementation would definitely be appropriate. Obviously, for anyone and everyone, creatine is awesome, but especially for those women that are vegetarian or vegan that aren't getting enough of those animal foods.
Exactly. And think
Um,
about older populations too. Like a lot of older
yeah,
individuals, their appetite goes down, their taste changes, saliva production changes, so they tend to eat less. So that may be also why we're starting to see studies with older populations, specifically like when you look at older populations take creatine, they're probably looking at, they may be looking at skeletal muscle mass or strength or fall risk, but a lot of them are starting to look at Alzheimer's disease, cognitive function. And when you take somebody who's already low in protein and you give them more of that nutrient, the creatine, they should theoretically, and what we see in the literature, have improved cognitive function, which is really cool. So memory, attention, specifically executive functioning a little bit. It's not going to make you smarter. It just provides the brain the energy it needs to do what it naturally would do.
and that's important for that population. Like when you think of getting older, you want to be a functioning adult. Like there's a lot that goes into that. But the fact that this simple, well-researched nutrient of just supplementing with the minimum dose, 3 to 5 grams a
Mhm.
day, can be helpful with that population. That can change a lot.
Oh, I'm trying to get my mom on it. Yeah,
Oh,
this is the
really?
thing. I got my dad on it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to my mom. Yeah, it's just everybody out there who's either trying creatine or trying to get their parent or trying to get their spouse or girlfriend, wife, anybody trying to take it. I'm in the same boat. But it does make a difference because even anecdotally, obviously through the literature, which is more important, but anecdotally it's been very beneficial.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm like, okay, mom, you, my aunt, my
Yeah,
dad, my everyone.
yeah. Take care of that brain.
Yeah, exactly. And what I thought was cool too was when you guys were presenting, talking about people who could benefit. We kind of mentioned this already, but um, like pilots who
Yep.
where that cognitive function is just like, oh my gosh, or a tactical athlete who's having to do multiple things, or
Yeah.
a sleep deprived mom
Yeah.
in like the trenches after having a
Yeah.
baby, like how beneficial this simple thing can be. So
Yeah.
you said we can add it to food. We can, of course, add it to our warm liquid.
Yep.
Pair it with carbohydrates. Is there a certain amount of carbohydrates?
Roughly about 15 grams. So like a
Okay.
slice of bread. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing crazy, just a little
Okay.
bit.
Awesome. And that makes sense. So, creatine monohydrate, the timing doesn't really matter. We want to stay as consistent as possible.
Timing
And
doesn't matter as much. There was actually a paper study or came out a couple years ago, I believe with Graham Close. But kind of the title was like timing of creatine. And again, the most important thing about creatine, zooming out, is consistency. So taking it daily or most days of the week, skipping a couple if it's budget or whatever reason, if you're traveling. But if you can take it around your training, whether before, during, or after, maybe also beneficial, probably more so just because of routine. Because when you are working out, you usually have some kind of routine that you do before, you usually have some kind of food routine afterwards. So just throwing it in there is probably more so the reason why. Physiologically, maybe it'll make a little bit of difference because your blood's flowing. But like I said, zooming out, big picture, just take it regularly.
yeah, because that's going to be more important than trying to figure out the exact time. I think a lot of people are hyper focused on that with it, anything when it comes to
Yes.
nutrition and wellness. But
Yes.
consistency is the name of the game. And then powder is what you would recommend, or what are your thoughts on capsules? And can you talk to us about the gummies?
Oh my gosh, the gummies. The gummies are a thing. I feel like a lot of times industry jumps way far ahead compared to research. Collagen is another great example. All of a sudden, some research started to come out about collagen, and then you saw it everywhere. There's collagen in your yogurt, there's collagen in coffee creamer. There's everything has collagen in it, just like everything has protein in it now. But we have to go back to why am I taking this? What am I trying to achieve? If you're just taking a very small dose, like some supplements that are poorly formulated might have like a gram of creatine in it, is that going to do anything for you? No, it's not the minimum effective dose. Is it going to hurt you? Probably not. if it's in the right form. That's what, you don't see creatine in energy drinks because it's not stable. So they have not figured that out. You are seeing it in gummies because who doesn't like a gummy, right? But the science is not there to support that you're getting the creatine itself at the dose that's recommended, because again, it's not stable in certain environments. So it's that, but it's more expensive, and you would have to consume, for most of the brands that are out there, maybe 5 or so gummies a day to achieve that dose. And then before you know it, you bought a bag that you thought would last you a month, and it lasts you a week and a half. So it just makes the most sense to purchase creatine monohydrate, which is cheaper than creatine hydrochloride or most other creatine forms, creatine HCl. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's powder form, and it's tasteless. So you can put it almost on anything. So creatine powder form is what I recommend the most, because you're not going to find liquid form, and the gummies just aren't there yet. It maybe will get there, but chemistry is chemistry. And if you can't guarantee me 5 grams of creatine in one gummy, I'm not going to take it.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. Plus, they're putting other things in there too, right? Like they may be
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
additional, not that sugar is bad. I mean, especially if you're exercising, it's going to be beneficial, but they could
Uh,
potentially be putting other things that you may not want or need. And
yeah.
then, like you said, if you have to take 5 instead of one, like, okay, might as well
Yeah.
just do the powder. I can throw it in
Capsules are
anything.
possible because it's the powder just in a capsule form. But
Yeah.
again, like, how many capsules am I supposed to swallow? It's hard enough for me to get somebody to take a multivitamin in capsule
Yeah.
form. I can only imagine as it say, hey, Mrs. So and so, can you please swallow 5 more pills in addition to your other pills that you're taking to get to your creatine? No, just use a powder and put in your coffee and call it a day.
Exactly. Let's keep it simple. Life is already, people are
It's
always looking
already
for the powder
It's
form
already
too of
complicated
anything.
enough. Let's not run away with it.
Exactly. Let's try to make this as simple as we can. So you talked about your supplement stack. You said multivitamin, omega-3s, vitamin D, and
And
creatine.
creatine, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Every day.
Every
That's
day. Other
nice.
things might come and go, but that's
Yeah.
kind of my general, like, this is my daily routine. And it's really, the multivitamin is more contingent upon your diet, or how balanced your diet is. I take it just to make sure that I am getting adequate magnesium or some of the micronutrients I'm just trying to tackle. If my diet's variable, or if I'm traveling a lot, just making sure, it doesn't hurt. And there's good literature to support multivitamins across ages. So I take that. Because that doesn't give me enough vitamin D, I take vitamin D separately. That vitamin D dose may depend on time of year, where you live, or kind of your blood level as well. You mentioned that. Omega-3 fish oil, because I don't eat salmon every day. I can't afford that. But also, I like eating other meats too. And then, of course, creatine, because, I'm not eating 6 hamburgers a day.
That's an awesome stack. And it's easy to travel with. Have you seen the single servings of creatine
They
to
do. There are
travel with?
2 brands that I like to recommend that do have the single serving
Yeah.
creatine. It's a lot better than opening a Ziploc bag and dumping a mysterious white powder and trying to go through
Yes.
TSA with that,
Oh
which
my
I
gosh.
have done before, but I would not recommend.
Oh, same. And you're like writing creatine on it. Like it's
Like, this
sorry.
is legit. Like, oh my God, please strip search this girl. What does she have
Yeah.
on her?
Seriously. Oh my gosh. I know once I only know of one brand, so we'll have to talk offline of the other
Yeah.
brand. But once I found the single serving, I was like, yes, this is
Yes.
awesome just because it's so easy to travel with. I
Yep.
have a single serving of some other supplements or my pack, like my stack that I have.
Yeah.
So it's always nice versus a little bag of white powder and people
Oh
are
my gosh, yeah.
questioning,
And you
what are
kind of
you doing?
mentioned, traveling, tactical athletes, any first responder, anybody who's sleep deprived. And again, like, my definition of sleep deprivation, and from what I've seen in the literature, is 5 hours or less of sleep that night or whatever. The study that came out in 2022, I believe, that single high dose of creatine at 0.35 grams per kg, which is roughly, 30 grams of creatine, split into a couple different servings. What they found was, when they dosed that for individuals who were sleep deprived, they had fewer negative effects from that sleep deprivation, which we know sleep deprivation affects your brain in really negative ways. It affects your memory, it affects your attention, it affects the pH levels of your brain. The creatine helped mitigate some of that negative effect. So I look at this as a practitioner, I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's a nutrient that I could give somebody that can help their brain after a night of sleep deprivation. We talked about mom brain and traveling, all these things. They're all the same essentially, to that respect at least. And I could recommend something that's not just caffeine. I'm not like you could still do caffeine, but again, caffeine is just going to wake you up. It's not going to do anything specific for your brain energy specifically. It's just going to stimulate you. But creatine, that's why I travel with creatine all the time. I take it when I'm sleep deprived. I recommend it for my sleep deprived folks, or chronically stressed or anything like that that's going to create that higher stress load in the brain and where you need the energy source. And there is a significant difference anecdotally and through the literature when you do that.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Cause yeah, all those different, I mean, and that you may be a sleep deprived mom who's also traveling, or someone who's going back to work, or the tactical athlete, or various different types of people doing different things. It can be so beneficial for the brain. And then let's talk some other benefits that you'll see. We've talked about, of course, muscle mass
Mhm.
and skeletal muscle mass,
Yep.
cognitive function. What other benefits are you seeing in the research, and
Yeah.
especially with your clients too?
I really like to see. So again, we kind of mentioned creatine started as like performance, an ergogenic aid. So it helps with performance by way of increasing your energy supply to working muscle and brain. So it allows you to work harder, longer, essentially. So it allows you in that way. So it doesn't build the muscle for you. It gives that construction worker a little bit of coffee so he can do his job faster. But if you're looking at each decade of life, I let the kind of table that I put up in at the Fancy presentation kind of went through a lifespan of a woman. I'm kind of looking at it now. Even going back to what we're starting to see through surveys and Hain studies is children, babies, 0 to 2 years old, head circumference is better when mom and baby had adequate creatine. Now, obviously, we're not giving a couple week old babies or months old or even that age group creatine yet. I wouldn't be opposed to it in some ways, but this is like okay, they're assuming they're drinking mom's breast milk. The first initial supply of colostrum from mom is heavily loaded in creatine, and if your baby's getting that, then they're getting creatine. If mom consumes enough a diet adequate creatine, you're giving that to your baby as well. So each decade of life is going to have different goals. So babies, head circumference, growth, development, cognitive development, there may be more there's support there for mom, there's support there for baby, but more literature needs to happen there. Now you go into kind of the preteen teenage years. I get asked all the time by parents like, should my son or daughter take creatine? And after, my first thought is obviously food first, dietitian. Make sure your kid's eating enough because if you're not exercising, training, and getting adequate calories, no amount of creatine is going to do anything for you. You cannot sub one for the other. You have to first make sure you're getting those basics, the foundational stuff for athletes across the board, and then you could add the extra sprinkles of love. So athletic performance, a lot of literature was done on swimmers and soccer players so far. There's others. I mean, D1 athletes use creatine all the time. They're not given it because it's against the NCAA rules, but they do it. Strength, power, anaerobic performance all improve with creatine supplementation. Now we get into kind of the childbearing per se years, like their 20s for women. And now your priorities shift, right? Like maybe I'm not a competitive athlete anymore. Maybe I'm just trying to start to improve my health. And I want to make sure that I'm, maintaining my muscle mass. I want to decrease my fatigue. I'm starting to think about my brain health because I'm starting to get in my career. Sleep in your 20s because maybe you're staying up later, you got the social jet lag where you're staying up later to hang out with your friends, your family, and you're kind of intentionally unintentionally sleep deprived. Can creatine benefit you? are you entering a profession where creatine would be more beneficial? Are you a first responder? Are you a professional athlete where you could potentially be at risk for concussions? If you are working a job where you could potentially sustain any kind of head trauma, those athletes, yes, absolutely. Your need for creatine may be higher than my average mom who is a clerk at the store down the road. You know what I mean? Both could benefit, but a little bit differently, a little bit higher priority for that athlete. And now we move into, okay, now you're pregnant or you're planning to be pregnant, and literature shows a decrease in prenatal injury risk, preterm birth risk, decreased oxidative stress, decreased perinatal injury risk, but also just increasing overall energy, but in increasing improving immune function because it's an antioxidant in a way too. And now we move into perimenopause. In perimenopause phase, there is not a lot of literature in general on perimenopause women, but it's coming. And it makes sense when you put the pieces together, what creatine is, what it does, and then the age ranges in which it benefits women. Perimenopause, hormones are starting to change, estrogen may be starting to decline. We're starting to think about bone health. We're starting to think about how can I maintain my lean mass? Because after 30, you can start to lose lean mass if you're not working it. You're starting to think about, injury, illness, perhaps mood changes, depression, anxiety. There's been quite a bit of literature supporting the co-ingestion of creatine and your conventional treatment for depression, anxiety, and improving the outcomes beyond just the medication itself. So that is powerful, and yet another reason why dietitians need to work with our counterparts in mental health and in physicians' offices because we work so much better. We are so much more effective when we work together. But thinking about how it can affect mood and depression, think like even postpartum depression. I have not seen a study on that, but it'd be really interesting knowing that there is literature to support individuals who have higher brain creatine levels or higher creatine in their diet have less risk of depression. And this is a big study, like over 22,000 individuals. What we
Wow.
see is that, less creatine, dietary and in the brain, is correlated with higher risk of depression. It's not cause, but it's correlated, it's related. And again, easy low-hanging fruit that a dietitian can intervene on. And now we move into, my mom's age category, the menopausal or the elderly group, where our concern is low muscle mass, low bone health, frailty, cognitive decline. Creatine has an impact in every single one of those steps. It could help muscle mass, retention. It could help with bone health. We don't really fully understand how, but it does support bone health, um, probably by way of improving lean mass. It can improve cognitive function. So it to me, it's like every span of life, every decade of life, you get a different benefit from creatine.
That's fascinating. Thanks for breaking that down. So, if, like, from the moment we're in utero to the moment we're
Yeah,
gone, we
yeah,
leave this world,
yeah,
there's some sort of benefit from creatine. And so
yeah,
why not? Why not? I remember you guys
exactly.
talking about that at Finzi. Why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah,
Why would you take something else when all of the research is on creatine monohydrate and
yeah,
it's also going to be cheaper and more than likely better than these other forms, at least for now with the research. But that's fascinating. And I love that. And especially with the postpartum depression and the postpartum
mhm.
anxiety, because we have that big hormone
Oh my
drop.
gosh, yeah,
Oh, and then
brutal.
yes. And if you're already having this on board, or even if you're starting it later, like how I started it, it's still going to provide you with so many different benefits mentally, physically. And the
Hmm.
fact that it can help in those areas is just so fascinating. So
Yeah, and I
sharing
think
that.
in nutrition world, we're like the kid in the candy store, right? It's like it's what's the next shiny object that's going to grab my attention in the nutrition world. It changes every decade. Shoot, it changes monthly at this point. It's like this new supplement, this new thing, this new diet. Honestly, like stick to the basics. Resistance training, aerobic training, balanced diet, making sure you're meeting your energy needs, making sure you're meeting your macronutrient needs, making sure you're meeting your micronutrient needs, your vitamins, minerals, and then all the other stuff is extra. And not everybody needs the extra stuff. The extra stuff usually comes with very specific circumstances, kind of like we're talking about, like the shift worker, the first responder, the tactical athlete, the competitive athlete, the injury recovery person. Those people need a little bit extra stuff to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And creatine falls under that basic list, right? You don't need to over fancy it. It doesn't, you don't, one thing I will tell you is if you start to see women out there, if you start to see creatine for women or a pink bottle and they charge you twice as much, do not buy it. It is the same creatine monohydrate that men and women can take the exact same creatine monohydrate. There's not a women's version like a women's vitamin and then a men's version like a men's vitamin. No, it's the same thing. We all need it.
Thanks for saying that, because I think, yeah, many of us, we get too hung up on like, oh, I like that. Like
Uh-huh.
all the sexy things, right? Whereas the foundations, the
Yeah.
basics, your
It's like me
nutrition, your sleep.
if I ever I don't drink alcohol. I drink extremely infrequently, but like if I ever were to ever go buy a bottle of wine, I'm like going down the aisle, I'm like, all right, which one has the best label? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly. Which one
like
looks
I'm gonna pick
pretty?
the one with the prettiest label. But
Yeah.
that's what happens all the time, and that's what happened to collagen too. Like collagen, they started to package it and bottle it and box it in very different labels, targeting specific populations. But collagen is collagen. Creatine is creatine.
Yeah. So add it to your foundational stack because it's going to be super, super beneficial.
Hmm.
As we're wrapping up here, do you have any client stories or any other types of examples that would show how creatine changed someone's energy, their strength, their confidence, or anything
Yeah.
like that?
I really, especially when that paper came out about megadose and creatine for sleep deprivation, I work with a lot of people who are chronically sleep deprived, chronic high stress, and I started recommending the higher dose during those periods of times. They don't need to stay on that high dose forever, but like during that period of time, this is what I want you to do because of all the things I mentioned. This is something beyond caffeine that I can recommend you to help your brain work better during those stressful times. And I've had plenty of those folks come back and say, that made a huge difference. I felt more alert, I was more focused, and I didn't have to increase my normal caffeine intake during that time. So that also helps. Again, if I can give you something that not really going to replace caffeine, but just enhance what's naturally there. And now, as a result, that person is now consuming less caffeine. Now I'm able to influence their sleep in a better way that following night. Now they're sleeping better, so now they rely less on caffeine. That's great. That's a huge win.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's what the first thing that many people will do is just go straight to the caffeine all
Hmm.
day long. And then it's just that vicious cycle.
It
And you're
is. You drink
constantly,
caffeine and
yep.
then it keeps you awake and you can't sleep, so you're tired, so you drink more caffeine. And it just, yeah, it's an endless
Yeah.
cycle. So I got super excited when I started to see literature supporting creatine in sleep deprivation or high stress situations.
And that's cool that you were able to then implement that with the
Yes,
clients that you're working with. And then they come back and tell you, hey, this worked. This is how I felt. I
absolutely.
felt amazing. Like, oh my gosh, give me more. So
Absolutely.
that is amazing. I love that. This conversation has been so good, Diana. Thank you so much for taking the time to come talk about what creatine is, the types, the dosing, and how women across all lifespan or all life stages can benefit from it, not only just in the gym, but throughout our entire life. Where can listeners connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yeah, I you connect with me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm at Diana Sports RD. Would love to chat with anybody who has any further questions. And again, I love to synthesize literature and then convey it and educate others and spread the message just like I did for my individuals. When I saw something in literature, I implemented it, saw a result, great, let's keep it going. So connect LinkedIn or on Instagram, Diana Sports RD. Would love to connect with anybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I'll put all of that in the show notes. So if you didn't get that, just head to the show notes and you'll be able to find Diana's information. All right. Well, thank you so much, Diana. It was so good talking to you. I hope you have a good rest
All
of your day.
right, thanks. Thanks for having me.
This was such an insightful conversation, and I know so many of you are going to walk away with a completely new perspective on creatine and women's health. Mama, if this episode helped you rethink your supplement routine or gave you clarity on creatine, take a screenshot, share it on social media, and tag me at wellnessbyval_ so I can cheer you on. And if you're loving the Strong and Nourished Mama podcast, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with another mom who's ready to feel stronger, more energized, and more supported in her body. Until next time, stay strong, stay nourished, and stay taking care of you. Hey mama, I hope you loved today's episode. If you got something out of it or simply enjoyed listening, would you please take 30 seconds to share it with another mom who could use the support? And if you haven't yet, I would be so grateful if you could leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in. It truly means the world to me, and it helps the show reach more amazing moms like you. All right, time to go chase my toddler around. Stay strong and nourished, and I'll be back on Monday with another episode. Talk soon.